we left over this paragraph of the prayer of Shema Israel, which the Kabbalists used where they used the analogy of a woman and a husband being together, coming to one wholesome completion state of mind, and with the desire of the heart, they connect upwards, right? And the question that is raised is, how do you connect upwards if that highest level is unattainable? But before that, we have that question. I mean that opposition to the Kabbalah, that in the same letter of Rabbi Meir ben Shimon of Narvon, the one who attacked Sefer Abayir, he has to offer this criticism about that idea that we just saw in the Zohar, that each prayer, each section of the prayer represents one Sephirah. He says this: Ve'otam hasechalim, those fools, amru levilti tet la'el hakadmon harishon me'en reshit ve'achrit toda utfila ubracha. Those fools said that one cannot offer God, who is the one before all, the first, who has neither beginning nor end. One cannot offer this God gratitude, prayers, or blessings, because as they saw it, there's no way to connect or to address or to communicate with that Ein Sof. Oy lenafsham, woe to them. I mean, they have committed a terrible sin in his opinion. Ni'atzu Yisrael nazor wahor. They have blasphemed. They have committed a heresy. They moved back away. They moved back. Translated also as away, and that is a very strong term, because Nazoru Ahor originally is found in the first chapter of Isaiah, when he speaks of the people who pretend to worship God, but they are actually pagans. And he uses very harsh words. He says, Zera Meraim, Banim Mashhitim, Azvu et Kedosh Israel, Nazor Wahor. Those are people who saw destruction. They are sons who have rebelled against their father, and they have been withdrawn back away from God. So very harsh words. And then he uses this rabbinical term, Vayasi'u atzmam mikadmono shel olam. They drove themselves away from the one who was before the world. This is a phrase in Midrash which builds off a verse in Bereshit, when Avraham tells Lot, "We are brothers. We should not fight over grazing fields. You should find for yourself. We should find where to each one where we want to live." And it says, "Vayisa Lot mikedem." Lot traveled away from the east, but east also in Hebrew is kedem. It means the first side. That's because the sun rises from the east. It's called kedem. And in the language of the rabbis, kedem is kadmono shel olam. God is the one who was before the world. So Lot drives away from God. So again, another very strong term. When you say vayasiu atzmam mikadmono shel olam, I'm saying that it's a strong term, just like Nazor or Hor, because we have to have in mind the context of the literature that those rabbis are talking about. So if he takes this analogy of Vayasiru Atzmam Kadmono Shel Olam, and he thinks about Lot and Abraham, where did Lot go when he left Abraham? He went to live in Sodom. So, and Sodom is the sort of like source of all evil. So those are very, very, very harsh criticism. It says, Umana arich b'divrei hasechalim. It says there's no point even to talk about the words of those fools. Asher kol tefilatam uvirchotehem la'elahot. All prayers and blessings that they have are to the deities. I mean, he says in his mind, and I think that it's not too hard to imagine why would he see it that way. the Sephirot are sort of other deities that interact with God of Israel. So this is not the appropriate way to pray or to believe. And he says, "Ve'amru litpalel bayom le'el had nivra." They said that one should pray during the day to one created God, meaning not God, a created God is not God. It is a secondary entity, and it's definitely not God. But he uses this term. Uvalayla le'el acher avalu lema'ala mimenu, and at night to another God which is above the first, and bimei kodesh laher, and on holidays to yet another. Can you recall an example of this style of prayers when you pray or you dedicate your thoughts each day to a different sephirah, a different deity?
Counting the Omer.
Right, counting the Omer, which has become a big hit among everyone. I don't know if it's in the footsteps of Kabbalah Center, but that system of the 7 times 7 Sephirot, and I've seen people posting today is Tiferet Shebatiferet, Tiferet Shebanetzah, etc., and expound upon that. And of course, there's a level of symbolism there. Even though when we get to the actual names of the Sephirot, we'll realize that it's very hard to translate Netzach and Hod as a unique, as standing for unique character traits. But this whole system, which did not exist, by the way, at the time of Rabbi Meir ben Shimon of Narvon, I'm sure that if he would have known about that, it would become even more, it would become very, very angry. To say, so you have 49 different combinations, and each day you pray or you direct your blessing to a different one. Where is the one God, the united, unique, indivisible God of Israel? So that is his criticism. And already the time of the Zohar, this literature started evolving where people would say the tefillah of Shacharit, the tefillah of the morning, represents Avraham. Avraham represents Hesed, which is also called Gedula, as we shall see. Minha represents Yitzhak, and Yitzhak represents Din or Gevurah, rigorous judgment, and Yaakov stands for Emet. So, or Tiferet. So, all these designations of saying this prayer is parallel to this person, who is parallel to this Sephirah, did not sit well with some of the rabbis of the time. Rabbi Yitzhak Bar Sheshat, this was the 14th century. It was one of the people who were exiled from Spain, from Palma de Mallorca. He ended up living in Algeria, and it was mainly concerned with the field of halakha. He has a book called Shuta Rivash, the response of the Rivash, and he tells here how he asks the Kabbalist this specific question. This is what he asked him. He says, איך אתם מקובלים בברכה אחת מכוונים לספירה ידועה ובברכה אחרת לספירה אחרת ועוד הכי יש אלהות לספירות שיתפלל אדם להם? How do you Kabbalists address a certain Sephirah in one blessing and a different Sephirah in another? He refers it to a system that was created to allocate the blessings of the Amidah to certain Sephirot. So the Rivash didn't like it. He says, it seems as if you're now praying to that Sephirah as if it is a separate entity from the other Sephirah. So the answer to that was, he says, Kachu be'inyan התפילה שהיא לעולם לעילת העילות אלא שמכוון המחשבה להמשיך שפע לאותה ספירה המתייחסת לאותו דבר שהוא מבקש עליו. the Kabbalist answers is the prayer is always to the cause of all causes, but one directs his thought to provide abundance from above to the Sephirot which relates to the issue he is praying for. That is, visually, it's something like that, that they call it in Hebrew. When you reach above your head to scratch your ear, it seems a little, circumventing the question. What he says is this: you pray, of course you pray to that which is the cause of all causes, or in other words, the Ein Sof, the inaccessible God, transcendental God. But when so that's whom you pray to. When you think who is going to provide my request, it's the Ein Sof. But you direct your thought to provide abundance from above to the Sephirah. So you want the abundance from above, that is the Ein Sof, to flow down to the Sephirah, which you focus on. And why that Sephirah? Because that Sephirah relates to the issue that you are praying for. So the Zohar offers a sort of a double system of representatives. Let's go back to the world of the person who is in prayer. The person who is in prayer is praying for one thing. Let's say he's praying for healing, which is mentioned in Birkat Rofe Hole Amo Israel. That blessing is under the realm or under the domain of the Sephirah, let's say, of Hesed, of loving kindness. But the Sephirah, again, this is all technical. According to the way this Kabbalist presents the issue, this Sephirah needs to be energized. It needs to be energized by the prayer to have the ability to help. This is part of this process of reciprocity between the Kabbalists and God, which, I have to say at junctions such as this, it is in a way something that is good for us to incorporate into our mode of thinking, to not think that we are passive actors or passive participants in a certain, like in a global drama where we're just here and God decides what to do. Rather, our actions dictate the outcome of events. So the Kabbalists went a little far to say that our actions has such important meaning as to influence God Himself. But and on a daily basis, in a way that we can apply that knowledge, we would say, just thinking that everything I do counts, and it creates some kind of an impact in the world, even if it's what they call the butterfly effect, then my actions and my thoughts and my words are infused with a deeper meaning, and then it makes them worthwhile. And once that happens, my next round of actions and events is going to be on a higher platform. So it's a constantly moving and changing situation where I'm willing to learn and grow. So now again, take this analogy and put it into the world of Sephirot. The Sephirot, according to that, are almost part of the Kabbalist. They are, and maybe that's where we get the representation in the members of the body. Why they would say Netzach Ve'hod Teren Shokin and Netzach and Hod correspond to the two legs. It is to say to the Kabbalist, now when you pray, you infuse yourself with energy. But that energy is achieved by praying for abundance to come from above to that Sephirah. So we here already find the grain of the idea of the resonance between the lower realms and the upper realms. the Shekhinah is, or the Sephirot are in between men and the Ein Sof. And when men praise, he awakens those Sephirot, and as a result, they get the energy from above. And that will later on will be translated into an interesting analogy where the Shekhinah is at once the companion or the spouse of the Ein Sof, but also that of the Tzaddik, so the wife of the Tzaddik. And now that you bring it up, we'll talk about the for a second on that idea of flow and the energy sort of that connects. There's Professor Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi. I mean, I don't bother to try to spell his name correctly, but look at the book. One book is called Flow, and one book is called Creativity. And the idea of flow that he mentions, I remember that when I first read his book, I said to myself, wait a second, am I reading a scientific work on psychology, or is it New Age, or is it Kabbalah? What is it exactly? And that's why I keep going back to say that, in a sense, Kabbalah is a certain manifestation, if you wish, of psychology, of just trying to figure out how the mind works. What he says in Flow, and also repeats in Creativity, he speaks about domains of knowledge. He says every field of knowledge is a domain. And he says there is an infinite number of domains. And our ability to connect to these domains depends on our willingness to open ourselves up to the possibility of their existence. So the more we are willing to accept that there are things out there that are accessible for us, we are going to connect to them. And that was really a very Kabbalistic concept. But I recommend reading both books, Flow and Creativity. And maybe that is where Marsha Prager took her idea of a flow in prayer and blessing. And I think it is correct also for people who, since tefillah is a way of meditation, then it has those elements. I think on one element is the ability to meditate and concentrate and focus. And reluctantly, I will have to say that even the tefillah by rote, when it becomes a routine and people just say the whole text by heart 3 times a day, it has some kind of a meditative quality, because we move into the realm of the subconscious. We keep just saying words without realizing that we're saying them. So it's the subconscious that kicks in, and sometimes we find solutions to problems that we're grappling with. So that is one element of tefillah. The other element of tefillah is self-judgment, which is really the original meaning of the word, because lefalel in Hebrew is to judge, so we judge ourselves. But it also, and maybe most importantly, contains the element of hope. So all tefillah has an element of hope, and that is really one of the key innovations, the new elements that Judaism introduced to the world, because all other mythologies or theologies were fatalistic. So at the end of days, the gods are going to destroy the world. It was Ragnarok in the Scandinavian mythology. It was later on Christianity would take the cause of Armageddon, but the Greeks also believed that the world is fatal. You will fight and the gods will destroy you, etc. Judaism is the first one to present the idea of hope and of redemption as a main motif in our narrative, and that is, I think, what people take from tefillah more than anything else. I think that Arthur Green also speaks about this in Radical Judaism. But the the idea that there is hope that I could get out of my situation is what holds me and doesn't let me fall. So it's a reciprocal process, but also it's sustained mostly by the person who's praying. So now we go back to the Zohar, and we'll look at the. So this is what the Kabbalist answered Rabbi Yitzhak Bar Sheshat. He said, your thought as the one who prays is to awaken the Sephirot that who is it which is in charge of the thing that you pray for, and when it awakens, it would also receive the flow or the abundance of that from Ein Sof. So now I'm saying this: the hidden meaning of these words, of what this Kabbalist said, is that one eventually can connect to the Ein Sof. This was the hidush of the Mekubalim, that one can connect to the Ein Sof. Now, what is this hidush? This is what Rabbi Yitzhak Sagi Nehor, Rabbi Isaac the Blind, writes. כי אין דרך להתפלל על ידי הדברים אלא על ידי הדברים המוגבלים אדם מתקבל ומתעלה במחשבה עד אין סוף. So Rabbi Yitzhak Sagi Nehor is considered the father, like one of the founders of what we call today Kabbalah. He was he lived in Provence. He was the son of the first Ravad, Rabbi Avraham ben David, in the 12th century, and 12th and 13th century, and he predated the Zohar. But a lot of the ideas that are in the Zohar are influenced by his teachings. And he says, Rabbi Yitzhak Sagi Nehor says, "En derech litpalel." There's really no way to pray, but ela al yedei advarim hamugbalim. You have to pray through the confined matters, the Sephirot, meaning you cannot directly access and address the Ein Sof. But when you do that, Adam mitkabel umit'aleh b'machashava ad Ein Sof. His thought is accepted, and in that sense, it reaches all the way to Ein Sof. This is the analogy of, for example, we could look at the spirituality in terms of energy, right? So there is let's look at the sun. The sun is a source of energy, but no one can get near the sun. We can even when we send probes to the sun, they have to stop at a couple of I don't know, it's tens of thousands of miles or hundreds of thousands of miles, lest they would be completely consumed by the fire, by the heat. And we cannot touch the sun. But the sun touches us, right? Or we can directly, immediately feel the impact of the sun when we use solar energy. And then we connect a device into that. What if someone plugs a device into solar energy, and that device sends electric vibrations through his body? Then he is connected, as if it were, directly to the sun. That is the idea of the Kabbalists here, that there's a chain of reaction that flows both ways. It starts from the Ein Sof, and it comes all the way down to the world. And in that sense, there's a chain of trees of Sephirot, each one of them lower than the other, and for each one of them, the keter of the upper one, the keter of the lower one is the malchut of the upper one. So they are one long chain of reaction. But eventually, when you come from the point of view of the human here on earth who is praying, he is connected all the way up to the Ein Sof. Not that it completely solves the problem, because, as I mentioned before, the problem will still be how do you make the transition from the Ein Sof to the Sephirot, right? We say that they emanated from it. We'll see that The question was, is the answer of part of the Sephirot? Is it disconnected? But that is how they try to suggest a solution. So let's look at this text also. The idea of Rav Yitzhak Sagi Nehor is developed by his disciples, and in the Zohar we found it in that form. There are palaces, similarly to what we saw before in the discussion of the Shema Israel, right? That the Shema Israel is at a certain part of the Tefillah represents certain Sephirah. Here we talk about the seventh. There's a seventh palace, the one palace above the other. The seventh one of them is Adonai Sefatai Tiftah. That is the introduction to the prayer, to the silent prayer, where we actually ask for permission from God to open our lips and to utter the right words. But how do we do that? We do that in a whisper, and it's called Tfilat Lahash. So the Zohar says, Raza de Razin, the secret of secrets, Bilhishu velo ishtama' kala. It's in a whisper, and one's voice is unheard. Hacha'ihu re'uta de liba. Here is the desire of the heart, leit kavana, to focus, ulsallaka re'uta mitata le'ila ad ensof, and to raise the desire from below upwards until ensof. So, let's look for a second at the pshat of Tfilat Lahash. Where do we take it from, and what is the idea of the Tfilat Lahash? What is the importance of Tfilat Lahash? The rabbis said in the Talmud that one should not raise his voice during the silent Amidah. And why is that? Because by doing that, he insinuates that God cannot hear him. So he has to keep quiet. But there is another secret here. Again, not necessarily that was the original intention of the author, but as I said before, the literature and the context influence the author. I mean, especially if he's well versed in the ancient text. So if we look 1 second at the first person who prayed Belahash. Who is the first person who prayed Tfilat Amidah? Silent prayer.
Was it Dina?
No.
Was it Alon?
No.
Was it Eric?
No, it was a woman, and she rhymes with Dina.
Oh, Hannah?
Yes.
Oh, Hannah. That's what.
Okay. So,
That's her name.
yeah, Hannah. So this is in Shmuel Aleph, right? 1 Samuel chapter 1. We know that Hannah was barren; she had no children. Penina, her assistant spouse, I would call it co-wife, associate wife, had children, and she kept teasing her. And then at a certain point, we have this. ותקום חנה אחרי אוכלה בשילה ואחרי שתו, ועלי הכהן יושב על הכיסא על מזוזת היכל אדוני. So Hannah rose up after they had eaten in Shiloh and after they had drunk. And now Eli, the priest, sat upon his seat by the doorpost of the temple of the Lord. והיא מרת נפש, ותתפלל על אדוני ובכות תבכה. And she was in bitterness of soul. She prayed unto the Lord and wept sore. And she prays, and whatever, I'm going to skip the prayer for now. But in verse 12, we read, והיה כי הרבתה להתפלל לפני אדוני, ועלי שומרת פיה. And it came to pass, as she prayed long before the Lord, that Eli watched her mouth. וחנה היא מדברת על ליבה, רק שפתיה נעות, וקולה לא יישמע. ויחשביה עלי לשיכורה. Now Hannah, she spoke in her heart, only her lips moved, but her voice could not be heard. Therefore Eli thought that she had been drunken. ויאמר אליה עלי, עד מתי תשתכרין Hasiri et yinech me'alayich. And Eli said unto her, how long will you be drunken? Put away your wine from you. And when I read this pasuk, it always bothered me, and it bothered the rabbis as well, but they gave a different answer. What is the problem with this verse? When Eli addresses Hannah, and he says, enough with the drinking, sober up. What is the problem with that demand or statement? Did it ever bother you that he tells her that?
Well, he's making an assumption. Yeah. There's no room for any other option. He's making an assumption.
Right.
That's what's going on.
Right, but if he makes such an assumption, so the rabbis, he makes an assumption. There's nothing to prove that. The rabbis in the Midrash didn't know what to do with that, so they said that, you see the word is shikora. They said that he received a prophecy through the breastplate, and he saw those 4 letters, but he had to arrange them in the right order, and the word was kesara. She is like Sarah, which means she's barren, and then he rearranged it to read shikora. But that's really far-fetched, because God could have sent him a message using the word akara, barren, and not shikora. The problem is, if you're the high priest, you sit at the door of the temple, a woman comes in and runs to the ark. Oh, we don't know that she runs to the ark. Sorry, that's my assumption. Have to be careful. Vatitpalel al Adonai. She comes in and she prays in a certain corner, right? Quietly. And Eli thinks that she's drunk. That means that he has never seen anything like that before, right? Now Eli was not a young man. I mean, later on, she brings her son over, and he grows there. And when Shmuel is about 20 years old, the war against the Philistines takes place, and Eli dies. This is in chapter 4. We read in chapter 4, verse 15. Now Eli was 98 years old. That is when he died. So when he met Hannah, the mother of Shemuel, he was 78, 70. He has seen enough in his life. How come Eli never saw a woman or a man coming into the temple and praying quietly? How is it possible? That's the question. And the answer is that it really never happened before. Hannah is a pioneer. She's an innovator. Maybe unwillingly, but what she did was never done before. If you search the Bible before Hannah for examples of prayer, what you will find is people, usually leaders, or people are in a position of power, praying for others. Or if they are leaders or prophets, they could pray directly to God. But other people do not pray for themselves. We find Abraham defending Sodom and praying for Sarah to have a son, or Yitzhak prays for Rivka. Rachel comes to Yaakov and says, "Pray for me to have a child," or "Give me children," meaning pray for me. Moshe prays for Israel, and even in Shemuel later on, Shmuel tells his Eli tells his children, in chapter 2, verse 25, he says, the children of Eli did not follow in his pathways. He says, "Im yicheta ish leish ufilelo Elohim, v'im ladonai yicheta ish mi yitpalelo." If one man sin against another, God shall judge him. But if man sins against the Lord, who shall entreat for him? Meaning that Eli understood that one has to pray for you, one has to represent you. So that was the situation until Hannah. Until Hannah, when you had to pray in this setting, when Eli sits at the door and Hannah comes in and she needs something, she has to go to him and say, "I'm here for a prayer, please pray for me to have children." Instead, she bypasses him, she goes inside and she mumbles. So he thinks she's drunk because nobody ever did that. And she answers, "No, I'm not a wicked person." But rather, she says, "Merov sihi v'cha'asi dibarti ad hena." Out of the abundance of my complaint and vexation, I have spoken hitherto. Vayishpoch et nafshi lifnei Adonai, I have poured my soul before the Lord. So Hannah is the example, not just the example, she's the epitome of a person who does not use any media or in any mediums, right? So Hannah does not use intermediaries. She doesn't go to the Kohen, she doesn't go to the prophet, she goes directly to God. So this is the perfect example for the Zohar, when the Zohar says that the Amidah is razad razin bilhishu vela ishtama kala, that this prayer is a silent prayer that is supposed to go all the way up to the Ein Sof, is that we keep in mind the legacy of Hannah that prayed directly to God without using intermediaries. And I think maybe that's the reason that Tfilat Hannah was placed in some Sidurim, Sephardic tradition. It is the first tefillah that you read in the morning when you enter the synagogue. In any case, this is Re'uta de Liba, Litkavana Ulsalka Re'uta Mitata Le'ila Ad Ein Sof. Here is the desire of the heart to focus and to raise the desire from below upwards until Ein Sof. And again, as we saw in the other in Shmuel Aleph, when she says, "Va'eshpoch et nafshi lifnei Adonai," I have poured my soul before God. It's a perfect example that we'll see later on in the world of Sephirot, that of a flow, but it's flow that goes upwards. She connects water to water. If there's a stream that comes from above to connect to us, and I pour my water into that stream, then I am connected directly to that stream. And in the terminology of Rabbi Isaac the Blind, those will be the two paths. He names them like that: Derech Hayedi'ah v'Derech Hayenika. Derech Hayedi'ah is knowing God, as the philosophers aspire to know God, and as the Kabbalists say that you cannot know God because this path is blocked. There's a limit not only to our understanding, but even to the understanding of the Sephirot, that the Sephirot themselves cannot understand God. But then we have Derech HaYenika. Yenika literally means to suck or to be breastfed. Or like a pipe that delivers water from an upper source. So in that way, when you connect at the end of the tube or the end of the line, and you drink that water, you connect all the way back upwards. And we have here a paragraph that describes that. There's an example from the Zohar of how they understand that kind of connection that goes upward. And so let's do it now to complete this theme, and then we move to the names and the characters of the Sephirot. So here we have this. Rabbi Elazar Sha'il le Rabbi Shimon Amar Ha-kishura de'ola, or some have here the version de'chola, but the right version is kishura de'ola. Ha-kishura de'ola Itkashar bekodesh hakodashim, the bond of the olah. The sacrifices are understood in different settings as a way to connect to God. So there are different etymologies here. The first, in the Torah we already have the word korban, which comes from the word karov, to be close. So even though we understand that esti krovet, I am putting something, I'm offering something, bringing something close to Hashem, it was understood as I am getting myself closer to God. The Ramban, Rabbi Moshe ben Nachman, also uses an Aramaic etymology for the word ketoret, the incense, which comes from Aramaic for tying. The shin and tet are interchangeable, so katar is kashar. And here they speak about the bond of the olah, meaning and why the olah? Because the olah is kodesh kodashim. In the sacrifices we have two categories. We have holy and holy of holies. So olah is always called kodesh kodashim, the holiest of holy, and it is completely consumed by the fire. So Rabbi Elazar says we know that, and he knows it from other statements in the Zohar. We know that the bond of the burnt offering, which is the Shekhinah, Itkashar bekodesh hakodashim, is bound in the Holy of Holies. Leitnahara itdabekuta dir'uta dechana v'le'ava'e v'Yisrael le'ela. I put here in brackets the symbolism of the Olah is the Shekhinah, which is the lowest Sephirot, Malchut, and Binah, which is one of the two upper Sephirot, if you look, or one of the three uppers, depending on how you look at them. So he says, and the Olah is the Shekhinah, the Malchut, and Kodesh HaKodashim, the Holy of Holies, is Binah. So basically, we go from the lowest Sephirah to the one which is a number 2 or 3, and it shines through the attachment of the desire of the Kohen and the Levite and the Israel. Ad echan ihu salka. To what level could this go up? Take this out. To what level does this go up? And he answered, Amar le, Ha'o kimna ad ensof. We've already said that. The Ha'o kimna is also, you have to have in mind, it's is a common term in the Zohar. Even if we have no proof that it was established before, someone will ask a question, and the answer will be Ha'okmu or Ha'okimna. We've already established that, and that part of the attempt to give that knowledge the presence of something which is solid and confirmed and unquestionable. He says, Dechol kishura v'yihuda ushlimu. All manners of binding or being tied to, being unified or being wholesome, kol kishura v'yihuda ushlimu. Le'atzna'a be'autz ni'ud la itdabak ve'la ityada. To be hidden in that hiding place to which one cannot be attached and cannot know. This is the source of the desire of all desires. So here we have a description of how that the action from below goes all the way up. But in sof lo kayema leoda'a velav leme'abad sof velav leme'abad rosh. But even after that, the Insof is not meant to be known, and it is not the beginning nor it is the end. That's the paradox. It does not create beginning of end because it's beyond and above time, and that's also the idea of infinity. So overall, what we've seen so far, we spoke about the theology of the Zohar and how it emerges from the medieval world of the contrast or the tension between the rabbinical world, between the rabbinical school of thought and the philosophical school of thought, between the people who wanted a clear and crude anthropomorphic vision of God, and those who wanted an abstract God. And the Kabbalah offers a balance, a reconciliation of there is this abstract, unattainable God, and there is the immediate manifestation to which we could connect. And on that, layers upon layers of theology were added. So with that, I think we'll seal our discussion of the Ein Sof as is and how to bind to it, and we'll talk about the relationship between the Ein Sof and Keter, meaning the other Sephirot, and from there to talk about the Sephirot in general.